Request granted. Um, Any other questions? I think we have a few more amendments.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Scott Peters.
I have an amendment at the desk.
Mr. Peters has an amendment. If the clerk will read that out, I believe that is amendment.
Amendment number 7 on infrastructure offered by Mr. Peters.
I'd like to yield 4 minutes to my friend from California, Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment, my amendment, would prevent the cuts that the majority is pushing for particularly to reductions programs critical for our nation's infrastructure. The amendment stops the threat of a government shutdown by restoring 2024 appropriations to the funding levels we agreed to in the Fiscal Responsibility Act just earlier this year. Investing in infrastructure is not just about fixing roads and bridges, it's about building healthy communities. And the budget resolution before us would cut infrastructure funding for vital projects in my district and across America. And I want to talk about one today in San Diego that I'm particularly concerned about. We have a dangerous and critical health crisis plaguing the San Diego region. This is the raw sewage spilling into Tijuana River Valley, polluting our beaches and neighborhoods. The South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant is a critical facility. It's a United States facility managed by the U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission under the Department of State. Under an international treaty, by the way, Mexico pays the U.S. to treat sewage originating in Baja California. This is overflow that discharges into the Pacific Ocean and flows upward onto San Diego shores. This is a plant we built in the 1990s under bipartisan agreement with federal money. But today, the contaminated water contains raw sewage, industrial waste, trash, and even toxic chemicals. And currently, the plant's infrastructure remains exactly the same as it was when it was first constructed in 1997. Expansion of this plant is crucial to process the increased waste from Tijuana, whose population has grown by more than 1 million people since the plant was built. So we've been working on this. In 2020, the congressional delegation from San Diego and our senators, working with the Trump administration, secured $300 million associated with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement to expand the plant's ability to treat wastewater from 25 million gallons a day to 50 million gallons a day. However, in June, IBWC, the federal government, informed the public that the treatment plant is in such bad shape from not being kept up over time through regular appropriations for infrastructure that we need to rehabilitate the plant before we can expand it. The effect of this is really remarkable, that we have raw sewage washing up on the shores of Imperial Beach, which is a community represented by Mr. Vargas. And as that dries, people are breathing fecal matter. The beaches in Coronado have been closed for 2 straight summers, year-round, because it's unhealthy. Meanwhile, we have Navy SEALs training in that water, telling us that they are swimming into pieces of feces that are coming out of this. This is a failure to invest in American infrastructure. This is a piece of American infrastructure that has seen years of underinvestment in construction and maintenance. It's left it in dire need of emergency repairs and expansion to treat untreated flows. This budget proposal and a possible shutdown would only make fixing things like this in San Diego and across the country that much tougher. The status quo in San Diego is unsustainable. It's unacceptable. We need help now, not cuts. We need action, not budget brinksmanship, and we need it now. The way to deal with this over time, I think, as I've talked about with the chairman and other members of this committee, is to get a fiscal commission to get ourselves in line, both for all kinds of spending, and that's going to be it's going to be a hard look at the budget. It's also going to be a hard look at our tax policy. But a budget needs to invest in America's success. This budget resolution and shutdowns interrupt the tourism and travel sectors, squeeze small businesses, leave behind communities, and put people at risk in places like San Diego, where we're confronting problems that we cannot solve on our own, like cross-border sewage that is literally sickening our community from a plant owned and operated by the United States of America. We got to get this right. This has got to stop. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank my friend from California. Now open it up for any member who'd like to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Yakum, I yield to you, Mr. Representative from Indiana, 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit the Government Accountability Office's report to congressional committees, High Risk Series, Funding the Nation's Surface Transportation, into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Currently, the CBO projects that the Highway Trust Fund will reach insolvency by 2028. Our budget resolution provides a deficit-neutral solution to the Highway Trust Fund by aligning the trust fund's spending with its incoming revenues. This is a logical step, as it will create fiscal stability, financial stability within the trust fund and eliminate its terrible track record of being bailed out by the American taxpayers. The original design of the trust fund made it so that individuals who utilize our highways the most would help support this fund through taxes on gasoline, tires, and other automotive-related expenses. However, these user fees have lost their effectiveness over time, putting the general fund on the hook supporting the trust fund. The GAO estimates that from 2008 to 2021, the Highway Trust Fund received over $270 billion in taxpayer bailouts. These types of government bailouts need to stop. It's essential that we keep investing in our nation's infrastructure, but in a financially responsible way, which is why the budget resolution we have put forward today includes a deficit-neutral reserve fund for investments in our national infrastructure. When we look towards the future investment into our nation's infrastructure, we need to ensure that it's done in a fiscally responsible manner so it does not compound our debt. When we look back at IJA, congressional Democrats argued that IJA would be paid for through $589 billion in offsets over the next 10 years. However, the CBO's current calculations estimate pay-fors only accounted for $180 billion, leaving an additional $400 billion shortfall. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment, and I would like to yield the balance of my time to my esteemed colleague and friend from Georgia, Mr. Drew Ferguson.
I thank the gentleman from Indiana and from a dear friend from California. Having a waste treatment plant in that sort of disrepair is absolutely horrible. I've been a mayor. I've had to deal with such things. I understand what you're going through. But I think one of the things that I would ask first on that is, how much has California and San Diego contributed to that or not contributed to that? I don't know the answer to it. But when I look at this and look at the spending and the choices that we're having to make right now, we can't do that kind of project and pay for $6.4 billion of carbon reduction programs, $1 billion for Reconnecting Communities pilot program, $2.5 billion for charging and fueling stations for electric cars, another $5 billion National Electric Formula Program, $10 million for total energy efficient building technologies, $5 billion at the EPA for God knows what, and another $5.6 billion at the Department of Transportation for low or no emission bus projects. My point is, we as Americans are going to have to make choices about what we can and can't do. And building electric charging stations across this nation doesn't seem to be as high a priority as fixing a sewer plant in San Diego. So I just think that what this budget does is it does highlight that we are now as Americans having to make some choices. We're going to have to make hard decisions. We're going to have to look at things, and we're going to have to ask ourselves, what's it worth borrowing money for that we have to do right now? And I just think that's the position that we're in. So I think this is, I would urge a no vote on this. I think America has got to make some decisions about either having meaningful infrastructure projects that the country needs right now, such as a waste treatment plant, or the Green New Deal. With that, I yield back.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Ferguson. Mr. Chairman, I do yield back the
I
balance.
thank both gentlemen. Both gentlemen. Been a long day. 1 minute to close to the representative from California.
I understand. I really respect the gentleman from Georgia, and I thought he stated his concern well. I wish I'd seen Congress able to do that. I think maybe one thing to think about in terms of our long-term approach is a commission like that's been referred to in this committee and some other places to get us on the right track. But I don't think that this fits and starts approach where we have an agreement during the year that we don't live up to is really serving us well, and I think it's going to hurt a lot of folks like it does in San Diego. So I'd urge support for the amendment, and Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for having the hearing.
I thank my friend from California. Let's call the question on agreeing to the amendment offered by Mr. Peters. All those in favor say aye. All those no? No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Would you like a, you bet. Pursuant to our agreement, we'll postpone the recorded vote until later in the markup. Are there any other amendments at the desk?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Trone?